So, I did something different. I got my hair chopped off today. It's all gone. I like it. It's very simple, and it'll save me time in the morning. So we've gone through birth control and periods, and we've gone through pregnancy, which means that we get to go through labor and delivery. I should probably make it so my computer doesn't turn off, which is going to require me putting in my password. So labor and delivery is an interesting experience. When I had Theo, I knew going in that I wanted to try and go for a unmedicated natural delivery. And of course, that meant, why is this working? That meant that I did a lot of research and I read some books. I read the Ina Gaskin book. And I hired a doula. Her name was Maggie. She was wonderful, and she was also training to be a midwife at that time. And I prepared mentally the best I could, but that being said, I was absolutely scared to death of the entire experience, and leading up was really scary. But I went into labor the day after his due date, so I was 40 weeks in one day, and contractions started right away at 5:45 in the morning, at least that I felt, and I was awake. Called my doula probably a couple into it. We listened. She said, yep, it sounds like you're in labor. Sit tight at home, hang out, whatever. Let me know how it goes. So then I called Mark, and he came home. She doesn't get away. And we proceeded to spend the next 12 hours with me just having contractions like every 20 minutes. And they were like painful, but like they weren't life altering. And I kept thinking like, oh, all my friends have had like 3-day labors and whatever, or had to be induced, so like this is gonna take a few days. And I was fine with that. At about 5:45 that night, because I went and walked and you do all this stuff to try and make it happen, I decided I was gonna go to bed, but first I was gonna take a shower. And I took a shower, and while I was in the shower, the contractions started coming quick. And I got out of the shower, and they started getting really bad, and they were like every 7 to 10 minutes apart. But they were super painful. And then we called the doula probably about 20 minutes in, not even, to this. And so we were going to go to the hospital, and she said, let me come to your house and check on you. She shows up at the house, and I got in the shower again, and she listens, and she times, and she's like, you might want to warm the car, Mark. Anyways, needless to say, I showed up at the hospital, and I was already 9 centimeters. For those that don't know, when you deliver a baby, it is not your vagina that gets bigger. It is your cervix. So your cervix is at the top of your vagina, your vaginal canal. And it goes from being like 1 centimeter usually, or closed completely, to being like 10 centimeters. Like the size of a bagel, I'm pretty sure it is. I can't remember. Google it, you'll see the pictures. And so when they say you're like 9 centimeters, you're already like almost fully dilated. And your cervix gets to that size. And then there's also effacement, which means that it thins because your cervix has to like thin out. There's some really awesome videos and pictures out there if you Google it. And so I was fully effaced and 9 centimeters, and every time I had a contraction, his head was coming down. My water had not broken at this point. And I also had what is referred to as group B strep. And group B strep is this it's a bacteria everybody has that just happens to sometimes flourish when you're pregnant. And if it gets into the area of the vaginal canal and you have the baby with it without any antibiotics or anything, the baby can inhale it. It can go into their lungs, and it can cause a respiratory infection that could kill them. So if you have group B, you get antibiotics. I showed up, I was pushing. They hooked me up to antibiotics, but I didn't really get many, and of course he was already on his way out. So we had to stay in the hospital extra days because of that. So you go from closed to 10 centimeters. You go from 0 effaced to 100% effaced. And your uterus does these crazy things called contractions that fucking hurt. And labor and delivery is just an interesting experience. With Theo, I sat on a toilet the whole time because it was the most comfortable. Joey, I sat on a toilet from the time I was like 8 centimeters on until my water broke. My water broke on the toilet for both of them. I had completely natural unmedicated deliveries with them. I had Group B with Theo. I did not have it with Joey, so I didn't need antibiotics. With Joey, my labor started at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was staying with my best friend Q because Mark was overseas. I woke her at like 3:30 and said, I think we're having a baby today. And he, of course, was born at like 10:30 in the morning. Theo was born at about 11 o'clock at night. Joey, I walked for an hour-ish because I showed up and I was a 5 centimeters and like almost, I think, fully effaced. And me and Courtney walked, and then I came back and I was like an 8. And then it was just riding it out from there. Pushing, for those that don't know, actually feels really good when you have natural, at least for me, it was natural deliveries for both of them, and pushing felt really good. It's like a relief. You're doing something, you're working with the contractions. And with Joey, his head was stuck in a way, and I had to try all these different positions to get his head unstuck. So, if you're ever having that issue, I did all 4s with a birthing ball, and it got him to like get in the right position so I could get to the point of pushing. My water did not break for the first 3 until I was pushing. And then when I was pushing, my water broke. With Angie, actually, she came out with some of her caul still on, like it was intact, and it was not until she hit her shoulders that the water actually broke. With Angie, of course, I was induced. Pitocin is a bitch. I can confirm this because I've had that now. I've had 2 natural deliveries. No epidural required. Didn't even think about an epidural really until like I didn't realize I was 9 centimeters with Theo, and I was like, if I'm not at least 8, I'm getting an epidural. I was already 9. It was way more bearable with the boys. With Angie, I was like screaming for an epidural. It was horrible. It didn't help that I also stayed awake the whole time, wondering when it was all going to happen. Like, when was I going to be in active labor? Pitocin was a bitch. I did get an epidural with her, but it failed because they said I was like a 6 centimeters when they checked me, but then I was probably actually more like 8 or 9 is what they're thinking. And when they gave me the epidural, and they turned me, she was also stuck in a weird way. They turned me on my side, and when they did that, it rolled her into position, and she was ready to go. So within like a matter of 5 minutes, she was on her way out. And yeah, so that was a fun experience, especially because they didn't believe me when I said I had to push. And my mom was with me. Mama Jo was with me, and she went screaming to the midwives like, I'm going to catch this baby. This is going to happen because you didn't listen to her, and this baby's coming. Also, the worst part of the epidural for me was honestly the catheter, and most women say that. And it was even worse because I kept thinking I was going to push her out with the catheter in because they weren't listening to me. So those were different experiences. Crowning hurts every freaking time. I don't care if it is your first or your 4th. I had an epidural with Zoe, so I can't really confirm that. 1st or 3rd, crowning fucking hurts every time. Does not matter. Fucking hurts. Felt like I was being ripped in 2. It was a horrible experience. I just always wish you could just numb that part. The rest of it I could have probably dealt with, but the crowning sucks. There's a lot of things that go into that labor and delivery. I have a lot of friends that have done water births and say it's way better. So if you get the option, do a water birth. Sounds like it's pretty awesome, which makes sense. The water would help the crowning, honestly. The water would help the, like, burning sensation that occurs. With Zoe, I was induced, and I had magnesium, and I got an epidural right away because I knew I was going to be trapped in bed. For those that don't know, magnesium is a neurological drug that messes with your brain and all your nerves and nerve endings. And it's used to prevent seizures. And women who end up with preeclampsia, the blood pressure that skyrockets, it can cause seizures, so that's what they're trying to prevent. With Zoe, with the magnesium, I kept passing out. Like, every time the magnesium would come in, I would pass out. So I progressed really slow with her. It sucked. Finally, they broke my water in the morning because I asked them to. I made sure my epidural was set and good to go still, and that they did another dose because I did not want to feel it. I am a strong believer in not breaking the water until you possibly have to, like until last minute, because the water from the amniotic fluid, it creates a cushion, like it's like a pillow pushing against your cervix. If you don't have that pillow, it's going to hurt worse. You're going to have a hard skull hitting that cervix. It's going to hurt. So if you can keep your amniotic fluid intact, it'll create a nice little like pocket and pillow and softness that won't hurt as much. Just my advice, at least. And mobility, of course, is really important, which is why I didn't progress very well with Zoe, is because I couldn't really do anything. So finally, around noon, they had broke my water about an hour before, and I still wasn't progressing very quick. And I wanted her out, and my blood pressure was doing crazy things, and I was done. And I said, if she's not out in an hour, I want a C-section. So I had them sit the bed all the way up so I could not fall asleep again, and I put on music next to the bed, and I had a dance party in bed, and I was like wiggling her down, and within 45 minutes she was out. So if I give you any piece of advice, it is mobility and being upright helps the most during delivery, because gravity exists, and so they will drop down. And move your hips, man. Get your hips moving, because that helps to like loosen everything up. Also, birth is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So you really have to look at it as like working with your body to make it happen. Every time you have a contraction, you have to work with your body the best you can. It's an interesting experience, birth. So having an epidural sucked because I didn't like having to be confined to bed. And the catheter sucks. And then after I had Zoe, I had to stay in bed for 24 hours with a catheter and the magnesium because of the preeclampsia. And that was horrible because you have a catheter in you and you have to move around in a bed while also taking care of a baby. It was so horrible. Oh, this is why I don't want more kids. That was a really bad birthing experience. I had great women in the room though. It was like awesome. There's a picture on my Instagram of all the women in the room and me pushing Zoe out. It was a good time. Mark was only at one birth. I had pretty much all females at all my births except for my first. And I will say that I loved having all women. There's something about that power of women who have been there and done that or have been part of that has been like a really cool experience for me. Girl power, totally for me. Do your research when you go to give birth. There's lots of options you can have, whether it's monitoring, no monitoring, waterproof monitoring, walking monitoring or not walking, epidurals, all the different other drugs they can offer you, which I always hear suck. How epidurals can affect you long term. They can cause pain afterwards that doesn't go away. Sometimes they don't work. It's not a foolproof method here. Angie's did not work. I felt everything. I was like numb and that was it, like my legs and stuff, but I could still feel everything. What is you? She's sleeping without a swaddle tonight. I'm not surprised. Do your research though. It's the same thing as everything else in life. Do your research. Have a good doctor. Be prepared with your birth partner. Be prepared in case something crazy happens, like an induction or an epidural. Understand that sometimes birth doesn't go the way you want it to. Sometimes things happen. There's a lot of birth trauma out there. And it's sad to hear about it, especially because I did have 2 really great births. Water births and being monitored while you're in the water. Having kids in the room or not having kids in the room. Who's going to visit you after you've birthed? What hospital, birthing center, at home. There's lots of options out there. Doula, I highly recommend. If it is your first kid, get a doula. Man, my doula was a godsend. She helped me so much to experience the birth that I wanted. And if you don't get the birth you want, they can be there to be just as much of an emotional support. There are doulas who are training, and sometimes they will be cheaper or free because they need to be at a certain amount of births. So look that up. Ask contacts. See if any doulas in your area have like trainees that they're working with or that they know of. The other option, if you're a military member and your spouse is going to be deployed or is serving overseas, there's a organization. I cannot remember what it's called. You'd have to Google it. But they're doulas who work for free for military members, military spouses, military members who have no partner. And they're registered to do that, and it's pretty awesome. It's like Operation something. I can't remember. But look it up if you're going to be alone and you're a military spouse or military member. There's an option out there for you. They're free. That way you have somebody there. And so when you have that fear of like, oh my gosh, my spouse is going to be gone. How am I going to do this? Or how am I going to get there? Who's going to do whatever? Look into that, man, because they will be there for you. And they will most likely drive you or do whatever they need to do. That's their role. There's also the postpartum doulas or the birth and postpartum. But yeah, they're helpful. I never used the yoga balls really that much. I did use a squat bar with Theo and Joey for a second. Joey came flying out because he's Joey. Theo took like 2 hours to push out, and I used a squat bar. And it was helpful having that bar. Those are the big things with birth. Do your research. Be prepared that it might not go the way you want. Make sure you and your birth partner are on the same page and that you're prepared. Music, water, those are important things. Don't overpack your bag, but don't underpack your bag. It's a weird double standard. You can always get stuff from home, honestly. And look into doulas. They're really awesome. I truly believe in them. I have a few friends who are doulas now. And yeah, birth is an experience. I've had 4. They've all been very different and unique. Like my children. So, birth is fun and disgusting. Oh, and after you have the baby, because people don't talk about it, you still have to push. Like, you're gonna have to push out a placenta. The placenta detaches after you have the baby. It should. Mine did not with Angie, and so the midwife had to dig her hand up in there to get it loose. It was a super fun experience. That's sarcasm. There's a picture where you can see my face while this woman is sticking her entire hand into my uterus to pull out the placenta. It is insane, the feeling. There's inside of you, literally in your uterus. You're going to bleed a lot. There's going to be water. It's going to be disgusting. You're probably going to want to be naked because you're hot. Your shame goes out the window. Like, you literally lose all shame and guilt, at least at that point. No shame. None. Everybody's going to see your vagina at that point. Everybody in that room, people are going to walk in and out. It's going to happen. Unless you choose to have a home birth, which is, of course, different. And a birthing center would be, of course, different, too. So, birth is an experience, and I feel like I can't even make this video short enough because there's a lot to it. So if you have questions about birth, feel free to shoot them my way. If you want to hear about natural ways to induce, I've got a few things up my sleeve that I've used that has helped. I'm not saying it induced, but it did help, I think, prepare my body for birth. And yeah, birth stories are fun to share. So, like, if you know somebody who's given birth and you actually are interested, you should ask them to tell you their birth story, because everybody's is unique and different. Birth is really cool. It's such a cool subject. Labor and delivery is intense. Having a baby is intense. It's not even going to everything that happens after. Oh, I'm going to. Today was a good day. Moving ahead, getting somewhere in life. This video is the longest video. Sorry, birth is fun to talk about. And next I will talk about postpartum, which will be fun. I hope everybody likes my haircut because I'm a big fan. And I hope you guys have great nights. Bye.